Hello, welcome to the Fabulous New Catalog podcast where we delve into the big questions of humanity and specifically the role technology plays in shaping it. I'm your host, Brendan Gavin, self-published author and self-proclaimed futurist. Today, I will review the 2021 film Dune. You can find a written version of this at my website at www.fabulousnewcatalog.com if you prefer. Otherwise, sit tight for a few minutes for my review of the movie Dune and let you know why I only want to go through this desert once. The film Dune's $165 million budget, sci-fi bona fides, and impressive cast of bankable Hollywood stars led by Timothée Chalamet should have guaranteed a decent weekend opening. And it didn't disappoint, bringing in 41 million in the US and 87.5 million worldwide, and topping the box office the following weekend to boot, which is why I cannot understand how I have come to the opposite conclusion, that the Dune experience is not built on solid foundations, but on shifting sand. Timothée Chalamet's October 26th Twitter tweet shows a simple image of a fiery orange backdrop and the words Dune Part 2 neatly printed in white in the foreground. At the time of writing, the reaction to this post numbers over 550,000 likes, 89,000 retweets, and just under 10,000 replies. Now, this kind of support for the sequel is nothing short of overwhelming. Rotten Tomatoes' audience score is a whopping 90%, and IMDb.com gives it an 8.2, and lest you think these numbers can be accounted for by the legion of Chalamet's 1.8 million Twitter followers who presumably skew into the teen years, guess again. For according to IMDb, the average rating score from 1 to 10, 10 being the highest, for every cohort and sex are above 8 without exception. The film opens up with a heavy learning curve. The first 20 minutes are a lesson in tell, not show, where facts and history are thrown at you in dense clumps and at breakneck speeds. I'd have been better prepared for this had I brought a notepad, sticky tabs, and a few feet of colored twine to connect the dots. It's never a good idea to have your audience confused before things start, and confused I was. From there, the story is quite predictable and very formulaic. Character development is quite sparse too. You don't learn much about anyone's history, their motivations, virtues, or vices. The villains are, well, villainous. They are crude, callous, and not much more. Compare Baron Harkonnen, the main antagonist, who is played by Stellan Skarsgård, to say Marvel's Thanos, and you get the sense that the former is a road sign, something you must regard and tolerate, while the latter is more like a map, much more interesting to follow as you traverse the peaks and valleys of their psyche. And speaking of Thanos, Josh Brolin's character, Gurney Halleck, is the only one that is remotely likable or interesting, but he isn't given much to work with. Probably the only one who came close was Jason Momoa's Duncan Idaho, a savvy fighter whose loyalty makes him endearing. But aside from wondering how Aquaman can thrive in a desert, I couldn't muster much curiosity about what makes him tick. Chalamet indeed shows up for work in this film, but he only punches the clock, doing his job and not much else to impress the studio bosses. His acting is not quite wooden, but more like a green sapling, swaying in the wind when he needs to and bending towards the light of the camera as he sees fit. Rebecca Ferguson's Lady Jessica Atreides, Paul's mother, also does her best to bring up the average, but her performance was marred by her incessant mumbling that unfortunately seemed to be imitated by several others on the film. And lastly, a significant number of people, Oscar Isaacs, Jason Momoa, Josh Brolin, Dave Bautista, Stellan Skarsgård, have all starred in significant roles in other big Hollywood sci-fi films, which makes their appearance here somewhat distracting. But I could overlook this except for the fact that these big names were not needed, since a cast of decent journeyman actors could have easily played these roles. So in conclusion, watching Dune is like taking a trip through the desert. You only want to do it once. Now, who will like Dune? Apparently a lot of people, but I just can't understand why. So I will not proffer a guess, but I will ask you. Tell me why in the comments. For fabulousnewcatalog.com, this is Brendan Gavin, and I will see you in the future.